Well, that's disappointing.
Sometimes you crank and push your bike up a grueling 3,000 feet of elevation through sweat and sand and bugs only to be rewarded with a foggy, socked-in view. Welcome to the Pacific Northwest. This is the time of year we call January. I should have known better. It never really clears up around here until after July 4th. I mean, I did know better. Here we are. Also, this trail ascends into alpine environments, so make sure you come prepared for sudden changes in the weather. It can snow any time of the year where we're going, so bring a windbreaker. Furthermore, make sure you have a Northwest Forest Pass in your windshield so that you don't get a ticket. Starting here at the South Coldwater Lake trailhead, which in this video we had to pedal a mile of empty road to get to as it's behind a gate due to COVID restrictions. Remember this time, everyone. Remember when we couldn't do things like normal because of a nasty virus. Except outside things. We can do outside things. It's a good thing I like riding my bike, but seriously, people are dying. This is awful. Anyway, normally, you can drive your car all the way to this trailhead. So, put on bug repellent and start here. Also, bring a lot of water. This is a dry trail. Make sure that your hydration pack is full. This here's a hiking trail that you're allowed to ride your bike on, and you will not forget that for the first 2 miles of this ride. Starting out on a bench in this pretty little meadow before it enters this alder forest where the trail proceeds to climb straight up the fall line, this is that perfect in-between grade that guarantees total exhaustion. It's steep enough to hurt, but not steep enough for you to feel justified getting off the bike. It's the perfect torture. This trail will gain over 1,000 feet in the first 2 miles, and it does it through a series of super punchy climbs with very little rest in between those super punchy climbs. Eventually, you'll winch yourself out of the woods at around the 2-mile mark and be greeted with stunning views down to Coldwater Lake and over to the top of the summit of Mount Saint Helens on a clear day. Also available for you to gawk at is this old logging equipment. There's a capstan that got buckled over in the 1980 blast, as well as a skidder, a bulldozer, and an excavator a little farther up the hill. The scale of the eruption is hard to comprehend. There's a 5,000-foot ridge and about 10 miles of distance between here and the summit of Mount Saint Helens. In fact, Johnston Ridge is named after David Johnston, a USGS volcanologist who was on duty when the mountain erupted. The blast wasn't supposed to get to him. By their calculations, he was in the safe zone. By their calculations, this whole area you're riding in was in the safe zone, yet because the explosion was precipitated by a landslide on the north side of the mountain that caused a lateral blast, the shockwave of pyroclast scoured this whole landscape clean, leveling old-growth timber like matchsticks all the way up Mount Whittier, over Coldwater Ridge, and even grazing the top of Goat Ridge over the Tumwater drainage, which I will be covering in a different video. All of this logging equipment was required to be left here to decay into the earth once this area was declared a national monument. It's a good thing the blast happened on a Sunday, because if it had been a weekday, the logging crews up here would have been at work and this would be a graveyard. From here forward, you'll be riding through the blast zone, where the earth was scraped clean in 1980, so this is exactly what 40 years of unaltered recovery looks like. The steep grades mellow out here as the trail finds an old road grade and follows it up the hill. Every time I come here, the grass is just a little greener, the alders a little taller, and the conifers a little farther over my head. It kind of feels like the plant growth in the area has really accelerated in the last few years as this area slowly turns back into forest. You can watch succession in action here. This flat area in the trail marks the beginning of a little less than a mile descent that only drops 150 feet. This is significant mostly for its beauty as the old road grade you're following drops into this drainage. Now, fun fact, a lot of this area was already denuded of trees before the blast. That's where this logging road you're riding came from, because they were working hard to yank every last stick of old growth timber out of here long before they knew the mountain would become active again. In fact, in a lot of areas, you'll notice that there's an absence of actual tree trunks on the ground, but lots of really big stumps. Historical photos show that they logged Mount Saint Helens right up to the timberline in many places because, extraction, progress. Anyhow, you'll eventually get to this intersection where the nice lady in pink is sitting. You want to turn right here because the left goes straight through grown over hell down to Coldwater Lake. It's a torturous nightmare that I covered in a different video. The first thing the trail does after this intersection is become unclimbable by mere mortals. This bugger is steep through here. The views do get progressively better and better as you ascend. When you get to this area where there is a pit toilet and a backpacking campsite that is permit only, look around you. All stumps, all old growth trees that were cut before the mountain blew. It's crazy thinking that this area that now seems like such a primordial wilderness was just another timber sale 40 years ago. Anyhow, the views are gorgeous. Keep climbing. There's sections in here that are very pedalable and other sections that are very unpedalable. It's more steepness and more incredible scenery. At least you'll have a pretty view to look out on as the sweat drips down your face and up into your nostrils every time you try to breathe in. I hope you put on bug repellent and that you put it on thick before you started this ride, because if you're up here at the right time of year, the biting flies are thick. They're not your normal, regular mosquitoes either. They're these, fast little guys that look like a hybrid between a black fly and a mosquito thing that zip around right in front of your face so you can't ever really get a good look at them or even an effective swat. And the worst part is that they're the thickest where the trail is the steepest. So you're getting swarmed while you're pushing your bike and there's, no escape. Don't even think about stopping to rest. You can't. You'll get eaten alive. Put repellent everywhere, because they'll bite you right through your jersey. There are also a lot of mandatory dismounts to get around obstacles as you get higher up this trail and onto the rim of this drainage, and then it's just more pushing and swatting at flies and until you arrive here at this little viewpoint. If you get far enough out onto this rock outcropping, then there might be enough breeze to keep the bugs off. Might be. I'd suggest maybe riding this one in late summer or fall. You'll miss the wildflowers, but you'll also miss the bugs. Just a suggestion. The mandatory obstacles continue up the hill, but most of this really pretty drainage is actually quite climbable. So enjoy some of the last pedaling you're going to be able to do on this ride. Seriously though, looking around these drainages is just unbelievably gorgeous. This landscape is otherworldly. It's like another planet up here. Eventually the trail takes you out onto this saddle where there is supposed to be a view into the crater of Mount Saint Helens as well as a clear view of the Johnston Ridge Observatory. Really, the view here is jaw-dropping, I promise. Or, on a day like today, you could just stand here and look at the fog blowing by. That's also totally a thing you could do. Watch the fog blow by. That's what we did. But you don't have to sit here staring at fog forever because fortunately for you, there's more climbing. There's always more climbing. This is the beginning of the last push up to the summit of this ride, and you'll be surprised to learn that it too is a steep, narrow bench. From here, it's just another 550 feet of elevation gain over less than a mile until you reach the summit. The trail surface gets a bit more torn up here in that sort of weird way that trail surfaces that spend most of the year under snow kind of just have that rough, kind of chewed up appearance. There are also a lot of downed trees in the tread you'll have to navigate around. Still, overall, I actually ended up pedaling more of this than I expected. I was sweating like a sailor in church climbing this section, and it was definitely less than 50 degrees up here the day we rode it in the drifting mist, so I suppose that's one argument in favor of riding this when it's cloudy. I would have drained my hydration pack if I'd done this on a hot day. It was late June when we rode this, and there was this one tiny snowfield near the top of the trail. A couple of weeks earlier, and this would have been quite a bit more difficult to navigate, so keep that in mind when trip planning. Later is better. After the sweat evaporated off of us, we were cold and very grateful we remembered our windbreakers. The views up here are normally beautiful. You have clear views to Spirit Lake, Windy Ridge, and of course down to Helens Lake, but not today, because that's just not how weather works. You get what you get. Fog. We got fog. Now, since this ride is an out and back, I don't have to describe the scenery you'll be riding through on the way back. Suffice it to say, it'll be lovely, and all those hills that were no fun to push up are going to be a total blast on the way down. While the descents are definitely fun, this trail is absolutely a hardtail friendly trail, and that's just fantastic. Pretty much all the obstacles are the type that you're going to have to pick up your bike to get around them anyway, so you're not really giving yourself a huge advantage riding this on a full squish. It'll be more fun, but unless you're riding this on a weekday, you won't really be able to pin it anyway, because this area is understandably quite popular with hikers. Except when it's foggy. I mean, we had it all to ourselves. Actually, in a lot of cases, your descent is going to be impeded by the awesome views. Even if you could just shred this, you wouldn't want to, because if you shred this, you'll miss all the cool stuff on the way down. This, like every other ride around Mount St. Helens, is one of those rides that takes twice as long as normal because you have to keep stopping just to look at stuff. And that's pretty awesome. Now I just want to show off this awesome scenery, so here, listen to this song and enjoy the scenery while I descend this trail for a minute or two. When you get to this excavator that got tossed off the mountain by the volcano, the last little climb on this descent begins. It's only 150 feet over a half mile. It's barely anything, don't worry about it. Surprisingly, when you get to this point, you've already done more than half of the descending on this ride. There's only 1,300 more feet of descent to go. That's how steep that upper half of the ride was. There isn't a ton to say about this descent that can't be inferred by what you figured out climbing it. It's sandy and smooth tread for the most part, with a gentle 6.2% grade for the first half that increases to an average 11% grade once you get past the abandoned skidder. You do need to watch out for hikers on this part of the descent. This is primarily a hiking trail, and most of the users are hiking, although a good share of the maintenance on this trail is actually done by a group from Northwest Trail Alliance based out of Cowlitz County. After a few switchbacks in the dark alder forest on the north side of Coldwater Ridge, the trail dumps you back out into the parking lot with minimal drama. So, this is the way to ride Coldwater Lake. Don't do the loop. The good scenery is up above, and it's a lot less painful to get to. Don't forget to like and subscribe, or dislike, but still subscribe, and leave me a comment below. Also, I'd like to extend a special thank you to Heather Van Valkenburg, my hero dirt level sponsor, and encourage you to navigate to my Patreon page at patreon.com/voiceovertrails if you want to support this content. Now, get out there and go ride your bike.